I don't know how far back you want me to go. I wasn't brought up by my real mother and father.
Okay, I've got a... yes, I was going to say, can we maybe start with the moment you were kidnapped?
Yes, we can start with that.
And I'm not making this up.
No, you're not making it up. Yes, all right. Well, so my mother was 17 when I was born, and had managed to get pregnant by this Oxford student, and that was not a relationship made in heaven, and it disintegrated really fast. In many ways, and both of them ending up with other people. And in the middle of this chaos, my grandmother thought this child needs to be looked after and employed a nanny. And the nanny stepped in and was with us in a place called Laverton Mews near Earl's Court. And I still ride by it on my bike regularly and sort of look wistfully in. And the nanny didn't last very long because she kidnapped me. And I think for the right reasons. She just thought, I'm going to save this child because the chaos of this situation. And
this is a big story.
Well, I ended up... The police found me on the Isle of Wight. And by the way, I remember obviously none of this.
Yeah.
But I now...
I mean, when you say you remember none, I mean, you were a babe in arms. You were 2 or something like that?
Yeah, I was 2, just over 2, I think. And what then happened is my aunt swooped in, having been living in Uganda doing her house year as a doctor, had just come back, was called by the police as the responsible adult they could get hold of, and said, I've got a daughter just a little bit younger than this young fella. I'm bringing him up. And I therefore was sort of whisked out of this chaos and London life, and spent my life being brought up on a hill farm in Wales with what were really my cousins. And in what I would describe...
Would you call them your siblings now?
I do, brothers and sisters. Sorry, that's what I meant.
Nice.
They are
so
my
nice.
cousins, but they are to me my brothers and sisters. Though I also have brothers and sisters from my real mother and real father who went on to have other relationships. So I have a lot of siblings around the world. That's something you need to know about me, Hugo. But the reason I even go back to that point is I then basically was brought up on Hill Farm, baling hay, milking goats, feeding the pigs before I went to school, all the rest of it, while you were in your privileged institution that I like to come back to. And I was given a camera. Sorry, it is sort of relevant, this. My real mother wasn't allowed. I wasn't allowed to see my real mother, but she was allowed to see me. So she would come and stand behind bushes and look at her child playing in this, to what to me was quite an idyllic family. And that, I didn't know this till I was in my 30s, and it breaks my heart to think of her seeing. But she then came into my life later. They allowed, but to me it was a little bit like, she's no longer with us. She died very young at 44. But she sort of was allowed back into my life and kind of became an aunt, because if you think about it, by then I've got a mother figure, I've got a father figure, I'm happy, I've got brothers and sisters. I'm really, but to all intents, I'm sure there are scars, and I'm sure I'm traumatized in many ways, though I'll tell you a funny story about that with a shrink if you ask me later. But my mother was allowed in and started to give me Christmas presents. So I had more Christmas presents than my brothers and sisters, and I was delighted. Anyway, I get given a camera. That's the point. And I was told in advance that I was going to get a very special present this Christmas. And I kind of thought, this is going to be amazing. I can't believe it. And I opened the camera and thought, oh, that's the special, okay, all right, the camera. But I did start to just take pictures of everything because I couldn't...
Do you remember what age that was?
I would guess quite old, but I would guess about 14, 15. And I'd just take pictures of everything because as I point out regularly, and you fail to believe, I have zero memory. And that is, I think, due to those early years, because I think my brain just said, I'll treat life as a whiteboard and rub out anything that might be painful. And then involuntary rub stuff out.
No, I mean, there's so much to talk about here. But I slightly want to just jump straight in and ask, how do you think that affects the way you take portraits today? And I'm sorry that I feel what you've just said is so touching, and almost makes one weep, actually. But have you used it either consciously or subconsciously in your career taking portraits?
Do you mean the thing about not remembering stuff, or the background?
The background.
Well, the background to me it's almost someone else's story. So my existence is in my head. I should quickly tell you the therapy thing because it is kind of funny.
Okay, Cambridge, can you tell me a therapy story, please?
So when my kids got to the age that I was when I was ripped out of one family and dumped in another, as it were, but for which I'm eternally grateful. So I don't mean dumped, but you see what I mean? I got very, very emotional because I thought, oh my God, that is the age where, imagine my daughter, my first daughter, would taken away and put in another family, and it suddenly hit home, and I felt very confused and I wanted to see this therapist. And I'm slightly simplifying this, but I essentially went to a thing called a somatic healing therapist who believes that trauma can be caught in the body, and you, like an animal shakes it out when the lion chases it, and then the lion doesn't eat it. It gets up, the deer gets up, and it shakes out trauma, and it runs off. And this is kind of somatic healing. And the idea is that humans don't do this because we have sort of cognitively the ability to override the trauma, the emotional stuff. But ideally, you would let the body shake out the trauma and you'd be fine. And humans don't do this. So I go to a somatic healer in order to find out if I've got trauma from these early years and to deal with it. After about 6 sessions, I think I had to pay for 10 or 12 sessions. And after about 6, she went, Cambridge, I can't really see the trauma. I mean, I'm really trying, and I'm not finding it. And I can't. They try and get you to shake, but they don't. It's not talking. It's very interesting. Where were we going with this, Hugo?
Yes.
Yeah, whether I use it in photography, I don't. I think it's made me insecure and a people pleaser, and I think both of those things are incredibly helpful in a portrait photographer.
Very interesting.
I know you and I have talked about, you very early on said something about being having imposter syndrome. I think I really like the sort of relationship of making other people at ease and yet not really having to give much of myself. So I'm talking, if I were doing your portrait now, I would be talking to you to make you relaxed and at ease.
I bet you wouldn't give anything.
I'm not really giving. So it's odd in a way to be the other side of having you interview me now is quite complex for my small brain because I like it the other way around.
Because a difference between us there is I think when I'm taking photographs, I give as much as I want the other person to give back, and I look at it as a sort of a sport, a game. I use tennis as the easiest analogy. If you play well against someone, they play better towards you, and I feel that very much in photography. So I was really interested in your thing.
No, I totally agree with that. Yeah. Oddly, so I am absolutely drained at the end of a shoot because I have given, but there's something about what I'm giving that isn't the real me in a way, which is why it's draining. Because if I was just, so I think when we come to probe you may find the same thing. I don't think it would be draining if we were just simply chatting completely naturally. I think we are giving. The reason we even describe it as giving is we're having to conjure that up from somewhere. It's almost effortful. Whereas if we were literally just chatting, that's not effortful.
If we were just chatting, all we'd have to think about is where's the bottle and why is my glass empty? Whereas if we're taking each other's photographs, we have to think about things which we don't really understand, f-stops. And
well, that's the other thing.
Are they the same thing?
So that is the other thing, because I'm trying to make sure you're relaxed while I photograph you, and half of my brain is saying, is it the right f-stop? Is it the right lighting? Is the background where I want it? So that's also kind of mind frying. So that might also be why we end up drained.
I mean, your story is amazing, your backstory.
Thanks. I didn't write it.
No, I know. It is amazing. The reason probably why I kept on asking you is if it influences your photography, is I noticed in my own photography, when I'm photographing a family, I want to create something with that family which I might not have had myself. And that only became apparent to me when I was photographing large families. I have no siblings at all. And so I was always slightly, I don't think envious and jealous are the right words, but I loved what I saw in this family unit gathered together.
Yeah.
And I would really work hard to get an almost sort of Sound of Music style family photograph, which they would use as an heirloom, because I always want my family photographs to become family heirlooms.
Yes.
And I'm sure there is a drive behind me from my past that makes me push harder on that. And so that's why I was wondering if you can see anything from your past which affects the way you take photographs.
Well, I think the reason it hasn't affected me in that way, but because of this memory problem, what happened with me is basically I taught myself to be a better photographer because I just photographed everything I saw, everywhere I went, everyone I knew. And I have at home in Wales, still to this day, I have hundreds of photograph albums of my childhood, my upbringing. And if you do that, you ultimately have to work out you end up having to edit them and decide which ones you're putting. And then eventually you start, well, why don't I choose before I take the picture to what's a good picture? And so I had to learn what was going to end up in the album. And in the end, rather than taking 30 pictures and picking one, why don't you work out how to take a good picture in your head? And so I started to do it that way. So that's how I got into photography and started to be interested. And then there's the whole area, which I bet you have too, which is we are lucky because we came from a world where you're physically having to develop a film and go into a room in the dark and have a red light so that it doesn't affect the photographic paper and make these prints. And I sometimes wonder for the next generation who could in theory play with that, but it's not a necessary stage. But for us, that was a fundamental part of.
Yeah.
So we are sort of physically, tangibly connected to photography. Even if we're using digital now, we know what it was at least. And I think that, to me, that has a huge effect on how I work. So then I get into all that, blah, 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 blah. And then frankly, I'm given a book by David Bailey for another birthday. And I kind of looked at it and I thought, this is exciting. Could you actually earn money? He's seems to be having a glamorous life, taking pictures of interesting people. And wow, was I blown away by these punchy black and white photographs. And I think that is the seed. That is the moment at which what had by now become my major passion, hobby, whatever you want to call it, and which required me to take over the family bathroom, shut everyone out of having baths for hours while I messed around with the enlarger. And suddenly I thought, no, I could do this. And actually, I tried twice to be a photographer. I tried once and failed. And then I went off and trained as an actor for 3 years. And then accidentally became the professional photographer I'd wanted to be. Well, no, I was just going to say I remember the first time I thought, I want to do this. And I was still living at home with my, gosh, I don't know how much of this information you want. I ended up living back with my real mother before she died and my real half-brother and sister in London at the time of A-levels, as they still are, aren't they? And I set up a little studio in there. But I ended up doing neighbours and friends and uncles and aunts, and I've recently looked back over them, and it's where I sort of learnt my craft. But it wasn't ever going to earn me enough money, and I just thought, no, I need a job that actually is going to work. And that's when I went off and I auditioned for drama schools.
But listen, you're at the top of your game now,
you mean just below you?
No, I was going to
quite
say,
the top,
actually,
is it?
and I think I might be at the top of the game as well. But I have no formal education, and what I find quite interesting is for the last couple of decades, you can get a degree in photography and you can get an A-level and an O-level and everything like that. Not having got a single qualification in anything creative myself, I wonder if you have an O-level or an A-level in photography.
I have none of the above.
Yeah.
And furthermore, all the institutions I did go through, so A-levels and then university and then drama school, I just took pictures and I found dark rooms. But at no point did I actually study. Everything I learned from other people. Yeah. One of them's become a very successful musician songwriter. He's called Egg White, great name, and he writes songs for all the top charting songs. But in those days, he was in a band called Brother Beyond, and they were having #1 singles. But his passion was also photography, and I ended up living with him. I don't know. I really don't know how much of this information you want. But when I went back to live with my real mother, she was having troubles even later on in life, and manic depressive stuff. And at one point, I got chucked out, and I went to live with this friend Egg, who I'd studied physics with. at A levels, but I was doing physics with him, and we used to leave the double physics and go, shit, I got to leave this lesson, then I'm top of the pops in a few hours. And I loved the kind of glamour of that. But Egg taught me literally in his bathroom how to process stuff in a way that I hadn't. He kind of inspired me. I've never thought about this, but in a way he inspired me. Along with having David Bailey in my head, Egg then sort of showed me technically how to do stuff. And to this day, Egg knows more than I ever will. But it's people like Egg or other friends who just taught me everything. And I'm sure you agree with me on this, because I think we've touched on it. But it's possible that to do what we do, your skill isn't necessarily to be the most technically proficient photographer. That isn't necessarily your real skill set, because you have brilliant assistants who know more than you do.
You know, I mean, I've quoted this before, but photography is, from my point of view, portraiture. It's about emotion, and I suppose I was interested to know if your early life and the emotions that you were deprived of, and the ones that you got that were unique, affected the way you took photographs. And actually, I showed you a photograph you've taken. I showed it to you earlier on today. I'm going to show it to you again. It's of Davina McCall, and I think it's one of the most fantastic photographs of yours that I've seen.
Why?
You can see it.
Why do you think that? I mean, thank you.
Shush.
Right.
Ask me that again. Okay. You mustn't interrupt the thing.
Please continue.
So this photograph, I feel, is really fantastic, and you can see it on our Instagram account, which is Hugo and Jones. But I'll quickly describe it. You wouldn't necessarily know it was of Davina McCall. It is of a obviously very beautiful woman with her head bowed, and it's a very, it's a photograph filled with shadows and a few highlights. And the reason why I'm bringing it up is because there's so much emotion in this photograph. You cannot see her eyes. You can't tell who it is, but you absolutely feel so deeply for that person in that moment. And I wonder if you sometimes hide yourself away from, because this is so powerful. Whereas a lot of your other photographs, you're engaging with the person, and you're sort of giving them to bounce back. But that's one of the ones where I feel you might almost have felt too deeply the emotion yourself, and that's why you don't take that style of photograph as often as I wish you would.
You've slightly blown my mind in the last minute, and genuinely, and I'm rather moved, almost to tears, because you've just highlighted something.
That's what the photograph does to me.
Yeah, but I didn't know that until you just pointed that out. So I'm going to try and say this without tears. But so that was taken in Davina's house in South London at the time. And something about, I literally didn't know this till today, till you just said this. You have genuinely uncovered something. Something about the way Davina is as a character is very, very like my real mother. And it's a sort of flightiness of expression and a speed of, but actually underneath a sort of, I can't remember whether it was around that time. She suffered from cancer, I think I'm right in saying that. There was something sad going on, which is what my mum died of. And I think when you started that question, I had no idea what you were talking about. And then as you described it, I thought, oh my God, I see my mother in that picture. And that actually looks like my mother too. And whoa. You could almost, yeah. So, wow. I didn't expect any of that. And yes, I guess the point is there may be some of that at work, and I am not aware of it.
Yeah. Well, I think we could all get more in touch with our emotions when we're taking photographs. And you are a master at it. So don't stop.
What I don't. So just thank you.
Do you want me to pick another photograph?
Well, no. But in a sense, I'm because me being me, I'm hearing a criticism in there. So in a way, you're saying, don't do that. Don't do that other stuff. do more like that. But I don't. What else? I don't. I love what you said, and I'm moved by it, and I genuinely nearly cried then. But I don't know what it is you're suggesting.
Well, interestingly, it picks up on that thing of, do we know what we're doing when we're doing it?
Yeah.
Can we actually put it into words? Because I often find I'm doing something, and I'm going to talk only photographically at the moment. I know I've got to push. Don't ask me why, but I know this is what we want from this session. So it's an instinctive thing, and I think that's what I love about that photograph, is it is so instinctive between the two of you. The trust between the two of you for the shutter to go off at that particular. Yes, there might have been an enormous amount of luck, because so much photography is luck, but you both have to have had the accessibility to your own emotions to be able to bring that moment to life.
That bit I definitely relate to, because to me it is all instinct. I can't. I mean, you can plan it to a certain degree because you know where you're going to be and you sort of know what that person's known for. But essentially, to me, it's the relationship that is formed in the moment with the person.
It's a strange thing, isn't it? Because when I deliver photographs or whatever, send them, get them to the client or whatever, if I have made them cry in the right way, i.e. not in fury or disappointment,
I used to
I
look
feel
good.
that I've really done my job. And to a degree, I'm really... happy is the wrong word, but I feel that what we've just talked about and discussed was good. But I want to flip it completely on its head. And can you tell me about a photograph that has made you laugh out loud, that you've taken, either the event or the actual finished product, or on any level, something that is the complete opposite of Davina McCall?
I will try, but can I say that firstly, you're taking me on a journey I've never been on, and I'm finding it quite interesting. And I will try. But before I do that, let me say something else, because I like this. There is something that's happened in my career that may relate to what you're asking about here, which is there have been responses from people who are photographed a zillion times in their lives, and they've come back with you've captured something in me that's never been captured. And one that springs to mind is Tom Courtney. Do you know the old classical actor, who was so delighted that somebody had finally, in his 60s...
He's in here.
I think he is.
Okay.
That he ended up sending me wine and saying it was the only photograph his wife had ever... And that is not unique in the responses I've got. And it must be something to do with what you're talking about, of capturing the real them. I don't know.
But I think maybe this whole thing about what has your growing up, how has it influenced your photography, is you have to, although you think you've Tipp-Exed it all out, you have to be aware of your own vulnerability in order to get that access to other people's vulnerability. So even if it's subconscious, and even if the psychiatrist or psychologist or therapist couldn't make you shake like a deer, I'm pretty sure it's in there.
Yeah. I feel like you might be my new therapist. I'm interested in that. So what was the other question? But can you let's come back to that though, because I think that could be a recurring way for me to examine my own work, which would be very interesting. But your question, what about a photograph that makes me laugh? Or
Yes. Because we've looked at a very touching, emotional moment.
Yeah.
I'm trying to look at the other end of the spectrum.
Can you give me more preparation next time?
I know,
you bowl these things
but
at
you know,
me.
it's quite fun to catch the thing.
Gosh,
that's so mean of me. So mean of me. Sorry.
Yes. There's a photograph of Matthew Freud which I really like because it was for an exhibition, Face to Music, and I think I can't remember how it had come about that he was one of the subjects, but I think he clearly bought into this notion of this is art photography and this is serious, and you know Cambridge Jones will do a great job. And I went round to his house in Notting Hill, and amazing house and very grand and lovely and extraordinary. And I ended up choosing to photograph him in the kitchen, and sort of with saucepans hanging behind him and in front of him, and him leaning over it. And this kind of comes back to I don't really like there's a trust element, isn't there? And so he trusted me to do this. when I finally sent him the picture back, he was like, Jesus, you've made me look like this is not even a good cookbook shot. It's like, you've just made me into this second-rate chef. It's like, and I said, I hadn't intended to do that. Because for me, I like the texture of the stainless steel on the saucepans and the kind of lighting around the kitchen. But to him, it was like, no. I'm a PR guy. You have just made me into a second-rate chef. Oh, dear.
Anyway, that's... I love that, because I think, as I said at the beginning, photography is a love affair with life.
Yes.
And there is so much in between the two photographs that we've just discussed. And I've done quite a lot of weddings in my life, and they're very, special days, important days.
Yeah. Full of emotion.
Full of emotion. Not always the emotion you want. But I did once also photograph a funeral. And that was amazing, actually.
Wow.
The emotion there, quite something. I don't really know why I said that.
Well, but
because I'm not going to tell you whose it was or why. But it wasn't a memorial service. It was actually a funeral. And I think one of the things that struck me about humanity in this funeral was the importance and the strength of black humour.
we can't let that go by without asking. So you don't have to tell us who it was, but who commissioned you to shoot the funeral? Was it somebody high up in the family, or is it?
Yes, it was very personal. It was friends.
Okay.
That's a friend of a family that I was very close to.
Because it is very unusual.
It was a member of the family that I was very close to.
Because interestingly, that is a very unusual thing to happen, isn't it?
Yeah. But that was an element of trust between them and me.
I liked what you said a minute ago about sort of the emotion of the Davina McCall through to the humour of the Matthew Freud, but and life generally. But as you were saying it, I thought what photography does, and I touched on this a bit earlier. I don't know about you. I find life infinitely complicated. It's astonishing to me that the world exists at all. Never mind how we navigate through it and the complexity. And I'm not trying to sound pretentious, but it's vastly complex. And yet, to me, the beauty of photography is and I wonder whether this is true of all artists in a sense. It allows you to simplify all of that, because in a sense you could argue that what you're doing in a picture is not what you include, it's the fact you've excluded everything else. So suddenly a picture of a bicycle wheel and a foot pedaling on that bicycle is honing on something you can make sense of and see, and you've actually excluded the double-decker buses and the chaos of Oxford Circus and the breakfast you had. All of that's gone, and you've just managed to go, no, I like that. And so to me, I'm finding beauty in an over-complex world through photography, I think. It's like, even in a person, I'm saying...
God, you've covered so many topics that left me speechless. Cause I
doubt that.
I was trying to find the quote which Walker Evans said... but you have to go back about 3 sentences in your thing. Good photography is unpretentious. And I really like that, because sometimes we see imagery and it's like, you've overthought it.
Yeah.
It's too complicated. But really good photography is never pretentious.
No, I agree with that. And there are people, and I can still find their work interesting, but it's like, oh my God, that's laboured. It's like, there needs to be a simplicity and a truth to me for a great photograph. And the photographers I love, which I'm sure we'll talk about in another episode maybe, is it's about the simplicity and it's a complex world, and photography is not complex. That's the way I view it. And I don't want.
Yeah.
Do you know the people who spend thousands and thousands of pounds on creating these sort of? I have one in mind, but I don't want to name him because that would be unfair. Because what he does is extraordinary. But it's the complexity that just doesn't interest me. I don't want to do that. That I might as well go and make a movie if that's what I wanted to do. And I have no interest. People often say to me, "Do you want to direct film?" Like, no, that's a whole different thing.
I've really enjoyed this, but it's been a strange enjoyment, because I didn't mean to press an emotional button as hard as I did.
It's fine, but do I have to pay you now?
No, but it pushed a button in me as well.
Yeah. I think you may be onto something that is worth investigating further. But what I hope you're going to allow me to do is to subject you to a similar line of interrogation in the next or in an upcoming episode.
Okay.
Because I think clearly, in a sense, the place those questions came from is revealing not only to me, but I'm going to be very interested to delve a little deeper into your psyche and your background, if I may.
I'll give you absolute permission to do that.
Excellent.
Don't know if I'm looking forward to it, but I will give you permission.
Well, thank you for all of that. And please do, if you've enjoyed this episode, please do like us, follow us on Hugo and Jones.
And
Insta.
my thing is, ask us a question or two.
That is your thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Great to see you.
And you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.